Good evening, everyone, and welcome into Season 2, Episode 4 of the Forge Podcast, brought to you by Shotgun Sports Network Alabama of the Shotgun Sports Network. My name is Ryan Messer, and we've got a lot to get into. The Bulls and the Squadron both had a full week of action this past week, along with the news of the Stallions and the UFL starting camp today as well. But before we get too far, with all the drama there. Want to thank you guys for watching on Facebook, YouTube, and if you're listening to us on Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart. I believe we've got the issue fixed. We just have to get everything uploaded and ready to go, and we'll be ready for that back. And I appreciate you guys for your patience on that, because it's been a crazy thing to get those back up and going. Also have to thank Blue Spring Living Water for continuously supporting us, keeping us hydrated for over a year now, and they want to keep you hydrated as well. You guys know it's the naturally minerally enriched water that's bottled right at the source over there in Blount County, Alabama, and there's no risk of contamination because it is bottled right there at the source. So you guys know you can find it at local grocer, or you can get it delivered right to your home or office. Just give them a call or go online to Blue Spring Living Water. And with that, this is Season 2, Episode 4 of the Forge Podcast. And we're going to start things off tonight with the Birmingham Bulls, who had a few transactions this past week. We found out on Wednesday that Ben Higgins has been placed on a 14-day IR. But then on Thursday, we wound up signing right winger Andrew Ballant to a standard contract. And then we also found out on Friday that defenseman Connor Scahill was signed to a tryout contract. So great to have those guys on board. Hopefully we'll get to see how well these guys do. Switching things over to the on Friday, where we had a game in Pelham versus the Huntsville Havoc. Things started off with Taylor Joseph in the net for the Havoc and Lotzie in for the Bulls. The game got started with the Havoc pulling Joseph just over midway through the opening period. Seconds later, he returned because Colton Olnick was charged with a hold. After a successful penalty kill, they wound up pulling Joseph again with just 4:20 left to play in the first. And a second later, McGregor St. Clair was able to dump the puck into the empty net for sending Joseph back on. In the second, we saw Kip Ledzianko find the back of the net just a minute 13 in to the second period there. That was followed by a power play for the Bulls off of a Huntsville slash. And then, unable to capitalize on that, the Bulls did wind up giving up a goal at the end of the 8th minute of play in the second period. That was answered 22 seconds later by newcomer Andrew Ballant with a goal of his own. And 4.5 minutes later, Phil Ledzianko was able to score himself. And then just over 3 minutes later, the Havoc wound up scoring again, but which was answered almost immediately by Colton Olnick scoring one himself there. And then with just under 3 to play in the second, Taylor Brierly got the Bulls' sixth goal of the night, sealing it for the Bulls there. The third was very defensive for the Bulls as they wound up drawing a couple minors on each side, but that allowed the Bulls to beat the Havoc yet again. Just who already clinched a playoff spot themselves. So for them to be number one and us being, in sixth place, we've been able to beat the Havoc pretty good. On Saturday, they took the trip up I-65 to take on the Havoc at Probst Arena. The game got started with Mike Robinson in the net for the Havoc this time, and Lotzi back in the net for the Bulls. Not sure what's going on with Stewie right now, but I'm sure. Hopefully, we can find out something's going on there. But things got going with newcomer Connor Scahill getting charged with a delay penalty there. Following the penalty kill, the Bulls wound up going on the power play for a boarding minor, which is peculiar, but with just 1:14 left in the opening period. Into the second, the Taylor Brierly got tied up with Sam Ruffin just over 4 minutes into the period there. Both of them getting roughing minors there. The Havoc was able to score just a minute later to break the stalemate. And then just under 2 to play in the second period, the Bulls wound up going back on the power play for a cross check. But that was unsuccessful there. In the third, things got very physical, and the Bulls were able to score midway through the period to tie things up. But 5.5 minutes later, the Havoc wound up pulling Robinson, who was just sent right back on 19 seconds later when Carson Rose was charged with aborting himself. They wound up pulling him again just 3 seconds later, but he was sent back on after Ryan Romeo was charged with a trip just 5 seconds later. 29 seconds after the Bulls wound up going on a power play themselves for a cross check, but unable to capitalize. They wound up going into overtime, which started with Andrew Ballant getting charged with a trip just 43 seconds in. And with another no call following the game, they wound up getting the game-winning goal there with Trevor Thurston getting called for a double major for a verbal abuse of an official. He was a little upset by the officiating there, so they didn't get the sweep, but they came out of Rocket City with some much-needed points for the overtime loss there. So as it stands right now, Bulls are 21-18-5. They are in 6th place of the Southern Professional Hockey League, and 1 point behind the Evansville Thunderbolts, and 3 points behind the Fayetteville Marksmen, who are. But as far as it goes, the Havoc are in 1st place. The Peoria Rivermen are in 2nd place. Both of those two have clinched. And then Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs are in 3rd. As for the playoff picture, you can see it here. We posted this on our socials. Huntsville, looks like the Huntsville Havoc is going to be hosting the Macon Mayhem. The Peoria Rivermen would be hosting the Knoxville Ice Bears. The Bulls would be heading up to Roanoke to take on the Rail Yard Dogs. And then the Marksmen would be hosting the Evansville Thunderbolts. So, great to see that. We're so close to the playoffs there. We got some upcoming games here. Roanoke is going to be coming to Birmingham for a couple games this weekend. Hopefully giving Birmingham a chance to move up in the rankings there. So go out, see the Bulls this weekend if you have the chance, because it's getting close to the playoffs, so it's good hockey right now. Switching things over to the Birmingham Squadron, who had a few transactions this past week as well. On Wednesday, Brandon Boston was signed to a full NBA contract, and then Jalen Crutcher was also signed to a two-way contract there, replacing him there on that. And then on Friday, the Squadron wound up signing Mo Bamba. Most people know him as the former Texas Longhorn. He was drafted by the Orlando Magic and played also for the Lakers, the Sixers, and the Clippers. And then we found out yesterday that Lester Quinones was also signed to a two-way contract with the Pelicans. And then today we found out that the Squadron had signed Devon Reed. So welcome these guys back, all these guys on board. So maybe we can get some good wins down the stretch there. On Thursday, we wound up going up to take on the Windy City Bulls. The Bulls started out hot, capitalizing on some good defensive rebounding there, jumping out to a 9-point lead midway through the opening quarter. They wound up trading blows throughout the remainder of the opening quarter there, ending with the Bulls holding a 7-point lead. The Bulls wound up extending their lead to double digits off of rebounds and some free throws, but Birmingham didn't let it get out of hand, keeping it to around 10 points through the remainder of the first half. In the third, the Squadron wound up able to capitalize on some rebounds and force some turnovers themselves to chip away at the lead to single digits midway through the third quarter. But the Bulls were able to pull away yet again, going into the final quarter of play with a 12-point lead. The fourth quarter was one of defensive fortitude from both sides, because Birmingham especially starting to chip away at that lead, cutting it to 5 points midway through, and then finally cutting it to a single score in the final minute of play. But the Bulls were able to milk the clock and win it there, 102-100. So great comeback for the Squadron. They've got to start, getting the game where it's within reach there. So switching things over to the Sunday game, we wound up seeing the Delaware Bluecoats come to town. The game started out with the Squadrons jumping out to a 7-0 lead early in the minutes there. They wound up going back and forth for a bit before Birmingham wound up going on a 9-point run, leading by 11 midway through the opening quarter. But Delaware did wind up coming back to tie it in the final seconds of the first quarter. And in the second, they saw both teams trading blows, but Birmingham commanding their home court there, doing what they do best and capitalizing on the defensive rebounds. Birmingham wound up leading by 7 midway through the quarter there, but the Bluecoats wound up quickly catching up and took a lead for the first time and only time with just under 4 to play in the half. But Birmingham quickly retook the lead and wound up going into halftime with a 3-point lead themselves. So in the third quarter, we wound up seeing Birmingham quickly jump out to a 10-point lead. Both teams wound up trading baskets, but Birmingham still controlling the lead throughout the rest of the quarter, going into the fourth, 79-67 there. Birmingham wound up going on an 8-point run in the early minutes of the fourth quarter, extending their lead to 20. And Birmingham did really well defensively, controlling the momentum, and throughout the remainder of the game, winning at home 111-91. In this game, we saw Mo Bamba and Josh Oduro both getting double doubles, and Keon Brooks Jr. and Isaiah Brockington both leading the point totals with 22 points each. So just an overall great game for this team. So as it stands right now, the Squadron are 8-15 and still in last place in the NBA G League. But it's not far behind there. So we've still got time. Still got time to a lot of basketball to play. So hopefully we've got some games tomorrow. We take on the Delaware Bluecoats again. And then on Friday, we see the Grand Rapids Gold come to town. And then on Saturday, the Westchester Knicks come in. So can't say that you don't have anything to do. You've got two great opportunities this weekend to see some great basketball. Switching things over to the Birmingham Stallions. As we said, there's been a lot of drama leading up to the camp which started today, but they had a quarterback holdout. You can see the image here where they wound up writing a letter to Daryl Johnston and CEO Russ Brandon about an offer that they were handed, and they called it insulting. So you can see all of the quarterbacks there have signed. So not sure what all they have going there, but we also found out on Saturday that Jamar Smith is retiring. Coach Holtz went on a podcast and was talking about one of the quarterbacks being just retiring and all. But considering today we saw that Matt Corral did sign yesterday, and of course Alex Magoo wound up signing I think on Friday. So that only leaves that up to that being Matt Corral or Jamar Smith being the one to retire there. But as we mentioned, camp does start today. Hate to see Jamar's not going to be there. Love seeing him. He was a great asset to the team. But we did get to see clips of the Stallions, especially Matt Corral throwing the ball. You also got to see Alex Magoo throwing it. So great to see. Heads up, we do have interviews coming up for you guys this week. So we'll have that on next week's episode. So thank you to the UFL for helping us out on that. But as for this week, the UFL camp is up and going. We've got a full weekend of Squadron and Bulls. So get out to a game, whether it's the Squadron or the Bulls. I don't care which. Try to make maybe even one of each. But don't say that we don't have anything here in the city, because we do. We've got plenty of basketball and hockey to watch this week. Stallions interviews this week, but until then, that's about all I've got for this week. I will see you guys next week, and good night.